So, Tim from Fractonium, another startup from the studio. Welcome.
Yeah, hi André, it's good to be here. Thank you.
As a British, how did you end up here in Australia?
It's the usual saga of love that drew me here, but when I came with my partner at the time, so she was she was Australian, and we've been living in England. And we said we'd sold a business after the dot-com boom, and
you sold a business?
Yeah, a small business
back in UK.
Back in the UK,
and then you were kind of free and living your life.
One of those things of
and you got bored and endless times at the beach of some island in the Caribbean.
Not quite. I'd love to say that's probably the German dream. That's the Hamburgian dream, isn't it?
The Hamburgian dream.
The Hamburgian dream. No, this was it was a small business we sold, but it was nice. I was able to take 6 months off, which was just beautiful.
It was a tech business, or
it was a web design house, because we started off with an internet cafe, bar and restaurant, and then we developed that into a web design house, and then we sold that literally 6 weeks prior to the crash.
I see. And then you thought, okay, let's say goodbye UK.
It was really just my partner at the time. She is Australian, and we came out to Australia, and we thought let's have a look at Australia.
What is the problem where you find a solution for with Fractonium?
Basically, the biggest problem is that asset owners and business owners are just really, I'm trying to think of a polite way of saying it, they don't like their banks very much.
No, you can say it really.
I can shout it from the highest, but I mean,
you don't have to say it polite. You have to. Well, this is real talk here. This is really real talk.
This is real talk.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, basically, banks have pissed a lot of people off, and I'm an ex-banker, so I made decisions that were really driven by parties that were driving a particular narrative. And I felt that there are better ways of doing things. And having been in this business, in the funding business for 20 odd years, sort of said, okay, let's look at the way this whole market is going. And because I got involved in initial coin offerings, ICOs, with the whole sort of blockchain space, I just saw complete transformation. Because initial coin offerings are essentially IPOs for cryptocurrencies. That's the best way of viewing it, okay? But having been right in the epicenter of an ICO, we had funds coming in from 55 countries, clearing in 3 minutes with an average cost of between 13 and 22 cents. Okay? And that, for me, was transformatory because there were no banks involved. All right? And ICOs overall raised about $24 billion. And when you consider the US VC market's about $84 billion, over 25% of funding at that time was raised by ICOs, but they were unregulated. Okay? So with a lack of regulation, there were scams, there were thefts, there was it was finance raising under a different coat of paint, and a number of the regulators got a bit upset. So they said, right, a number of places banned ICOs overnight, and then said, let's negotiate. But the genie was out of the bottle. And so as a result, if you put regulation around that technology linked into ICOs, you have something that's incredibly powerful, because it's the third iteration of capital markets disruption. The first one was Bitcoin itself as the initial innovation. The second was ICOs. And the third is really what they're generically being dubbed security token offerings. And that's where regulation comes together with this technology. And so the ability to transfer money instantaneously for negligible costs is fantastic. And for example, I mean, I've got money in my bank in Brighton on the south coast, right? Yeah. And from Australia, and that's a long flight. You've been there, right? It's quicker for me to fly to Heathrow, drive down to Brighton, pick up the cash from my bank, drive back to Heathrow, and fly back to Sydney than it is to go via the banking system. We're looking at the model of how do you fund different structures in different ways, because if you can fund like the pieces of art, funding that way has never been done before in terms of that structuring. And funding in commercial property, where you're blending different structures within the way you fund, it gives a lot more flexibility. So with renewables, in Australia, for example, projects beneath $40 million US are struggling for funding right now. So we're trying to look at the idea of how do we embrace all the supporters of renewables and sustainability, and it's massive globally, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. How do we embrace those into the funding structures? So that's what we're trying to look at right now. We've been talking to people in less developed countries, you know, in sort of places like the Philippines, like, you know, Thailand, like Ghana, for example, where they have power outages all the time, and looking at how do we present different structures of funding.
Why are you here in the studio?
Well, the studio, we started off with art, okay? And art is very much that sort of creative sort of side of things. And also because within the studio, there's a green screen studio and a podcast studio. So we've been doing some content relating to the blockchain and that type of stuff.
So you can use all the infrastructure here?
Completely, 100%. So, and it's also that the people that are here in the studio are probably, they're more mature startups. So probably the average age, I would say, is probably late 30s, rather than being in a very much a traditional co-working space where it might be, you know, that sort of 23 to 29 age group, you know. So it means that it's a smaller community, but, you know, there's a lot of very close sharing of ideas, and it's very much a peer-to-peer type structure.
Okay.
And the people behind the studio are just amazing. When you've met Chantal and the others, it's just it's amazing.
What was your biggest fail in life?
My biggest fail in life, not meeting you. But now I've met you, I've now succeeded. My biggest fail in life. What's my biggest fail in life? That's a very good question. I think I wish I'd got involved in the internet 3 years earlier than I did, because it would have been absolutely amazing. I think I suppose the biggest fail is probably the lack of focus when we had the internet and web design business, because we had an internet cafe, bar and restaurant, and that was a retail hospitality, and that was hard work. That was hard work. And I think the lack of focus, if we'd been just in web design right from the get-go, we would have probably, you know, got 10 times the exit we did. You know, where you analyze things too much and it can stop you doing things. And I think sometimes you have to embrace it and recognize, okay, if, you know, what's the worst that can go wrong? If the worst that can go wrong is you go back and find another job, then okay, that's the worst that can go wrong. You know, I mean, you put some money in, you might lose that, as long as you're prepared to do that. So when I approached it from this time, it was very much, you know, okay, I can see where this is going. How do I plan this, having been through all the experience? So I got in probably 3 years earlier than I did with the dot-com boom.
Tim, thank you very much. High five.